So since our last meeting, I want to talk a little bit about what I've done. I have concentrated my political and lobbying and communications work in two areas, mainly promoting the national strategy on Inuit education and speaking about Inuit economic development opportunities and expectations in a few public venues. On the communications front, we wrapped up a very successful 40th anniversary conference in November here in Ottawa, where you were in attendance, and it was very good that we were able to include some of the founders and past presidents of ITC or ITK, and of course it was nice to have our board members that are presently here at that meeting. I was really proud to see youth involved in that conference and contributing to the discussions and helping to chart the future of ITK. To me, that was a very important part of the conference. And in January, I was interviewed by Peter Mansbridge. I don't know if the board saw that interview. It was called One-on-One. It was a broadcast on January the 14th, and if you missed it, you can get it online on CBC. I was also interviewed by George Stroumboulopoulos. That interview hasn't been aired yet, but I hope they don't edit it because, he kind of jokes around a bit, right, when he interviews. So I went up to him when I first walked up to the stage, and I gave him a kulik. I said, "We're going to break a myth, George." I said, "I'm going to give you a kiss in Inuk style." And he said, What are you trying to do?" I said, "I'm giving you a Inuk kulik." I said, "We sniff, we don't rub noses." He said, "What, when you don't know who you're kissing, you sniff to see who it is?" And then I said, and besides, I said, "You always sit like this when you have your interviews." I said, "We sit like this," and I sat on the floor. So I don't know if they'll keep that on, but I tell you. We don't have a date for the broadcast yet, but it'll be sometime in March. Yeah. And then finally, some of you were at the 2012 Northern Light Show in Ottawa, and I think it was it was a huge event. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how many businesses were actually interested in working with Inuit, but it was a huge event. And I spoke at this conference also, and I spoke on the important link between economic development and the education system. And I delivered a similar presentation to the Toronto Board of Trade and was interviewed by the Toronto Stock Exchange and the Business News Network. So whenever I talk about economic development, I often talk about the need to educate our children and to make sure that they're getting through school because they are the workforce of the North, and they are the workforce of the future, not just for the Arctic, but for Canada. I'll be talking more about the education initiative later, but I just want to talk about two particular aspects of this file that I'm particularly happy about. First, we have lined up our first substantial private sector contribution, which is from Vale Mining, $500,000. And secondly, we have begun recruiting a national director of education. We're going to have a national center of education here at ITK. It'll be part of ITK. It won't be a separate, it's like Inuit Halisapingat, it's within ITK. And we'll have two people working there. And I understand that interviews have taken place for the director, and we will be reaching a decision fairly soon on. I would also like to highlight a few important developments in relation to Inuit Halisapingat, which is the Halisapingat. research center, the Inuit Knowledge Center that I proposed to ITK board, and they accepted it, which is to support the regions in their efforts to have better research capacity, as well as our Health and Social Services Department and our Department of Environment and Wildlife. You'll notice that each department has written an update that you can read, and I'll take some time to provide the highlights. Inuit Harisapingat has continued to focus on completing and promoting several distinct research projects and refining its plan for developing and moving the center forward over the next 3 years. And in December, the Inuit Knowledge Center National Committee, we have a committee now that is composed of members from each of the regions, met in Ottawa for the first time in person. And in January, Inuit Harisapingat submitted an institutional eligibility application to the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, SSHRC. So if you remember before, if we can get this application approved, it will allow us to access research funds that we couldn't access before. We always had to go through a university or a PhD professor at a university to be able to access any research funding. So the fact that we've applied to get this status, if we do get it, ITK will be able to apply for research funds instead of, like I said, having to go through academic institutions, which was always one of the objectives that I had. That application has helped ITK apply for the first time as a lead organization for a SSHRC Partnership Development Grant on mobilizing Inuit engagement in research. So that'll help build the capacity of the regions in terms of the research work that they undertake. Also in January, Inuit Harisapingat released its first publication, which is titled What We Know, Don't Know, and Need to Know About Climate Change in Inuit Nunangat. And copies are available of this report if anyone is interested in reading it. Next, I'd like to highlight a few important initiatives in the Department of Health and Social Development. Staff are currently drafting a report card for the Alienite Mental Wellness Action Plan. This is the plan that was formally approved by the board when we met in Nain in 2008. The report card will evaluate progress Inuit have made in this area, as well as identify gaps and obstacles. We are also working with regions to develop a national Inuit suicide prevention plan that will be a tool to educate governments and individuals on the complex factors that lead to suicide among Inuit. And we are also in the final stages of completing the Inuit-specific TB action plan, expected at the end of March. Upon completion and approval, we will work with regions and federal and provincial and territorial partners to determine roles and responsibilities for implementing the action plan. And I think Natan is going to be here later today. As the chair of NICO, he will be giving us a update on the terms of reference, on a renewed terms of reference, and we can also ask him about some of these issues. On the youth file, I am very pleased to inform you that we have hired 2 new youth coordinators, Kathleen Merritt from Merritt. She's focusing on the National Inuit Youth Council and Nipit Magazine, while Haley, and the other person is Haley Morehouse, and she is working on education and employment as it relates to youth. So we now have 2 youth working at ITK instead of 1. We've been working to build up the capacity for youth in ITK for some time now, and it's a very slow process, but it's happening slowly. If you have time, go on the new NIYC website. They also have a new Facebook page and Twitter feed. I don't know if any of you do Twitter. Nellie, do you do Twitter?
And I can.
Oh, you do? Okay. And you'll be hearing from Kathleen and Haley as they work toward the next Elders and Youth Summit scheduled for August in Nunavik. In the Department of Environment and Wildlife, who is John Chichu, is he here? They're continuing to monitor developments on the polar bear, including planning with the regions and other partners for CITES COP in March of next year. Concerns on potential CITES listing proposals also include narwhal, walrus, and seals. More information on this is included in your board packages. We are still waiting for judgments from the European Union Court on our seal products ban court challenges, but I am pleased to report that we are facing no additional financial pressures in relation to that lawsuit, as our fundraising has gone as planned, so we have raised all the money so far that we need for the court case. In the area of ITK finances, I would like us to do some research in relation to the cost of our current leasing arrangements, which run ITK $425,000 a year. And maybe this might have been discussed by ITK in the past, before I was president, that the possibility that might exist to house ITK and perhaps other Inuit organizations in Ottawa under more secure and more economically advantageous arrangements. We've been here at 75 Albert for just a few years. We were over on Laurier Street for many years. And we are already outgrowing the space. We thought we would have enough space, but it looks like we're going to outgrow our space. But in seeking other opportunities, we might have to be creative, as it is unlikely that we will receive government funding for a capital project. That's where we always end our discussions, but I thought I would bring it up again just in case there might be some interest on the part of the regions to look further into this. And I'm proposing that we do some research at the staff level and then bring ideas forward to the board as we gain a better sense of our options, if the board wishes to pursue that. Finally, as you all know, we said goodbye to our longtime executive director, Jim Moore. So he left us at the end of the year, and right now Udlu Hansen, who is there, everybody knows Udluet, took over in an acting capacity. And I just want to say that I was grateful to Jim for his admirable work and loyal service. And I am also happy to report that Udlu is following Jim's fine example. So that's my report to the board for this board meeting.